There's a lot of different methodologies to developing a spiritual reality that they all deserve to be respected and criticized. All belief systems do. We just happen to have one that is dominant in this culture. If I lived in Iran, it'd be a different story. If I was in India and I had a problem with the caste system that has been endorsed by Hinduism, I'd be having a different conversation. But I live here in the United States. I watched the movie Contact yesterday, or the past couple of days. We split up into two because it's a long movie. If you haven't seen Contact, it's a movie with Jodie Foster and early Matthew McConaughey. Fantastic movie. I mean, underrated, I think. Really incredible movie. And it's really the kind of the premise is Jodie Foster is a scientist, astrophysicist, and she gets a signal from a distant planet. So whatever. And they build this device that can apparently transport someone. It's a whole thing. But really what the movie is about, if you look at the deeper meaning of it, is about faith, right? There's a big question of faith in this movie. Religious folks want to be represented in contact with whatever species this is. It's a big part of it. And then Jodie Foster kind of has to operate from a place of faith, from a very rational, scientific-minded place. And I thought that it was, especially for the time, like the 90s in America weren't really a time for challenging concepts like that. And I think they actually did a pretty decent job for that time period. And it's been interesting because there's this moment in the movie where there's a select panel for who's going to go on this journey. And they don't want to send someone who's not religious. And I was like, that's interesting, because I think that actually would still hold up today. If we were just to project this reality onto us today, like, what would be the ideal person to make some kind of contact with another race, right? And then I thought about this. Well, it's like, the quote in the movie is something like 95% of people believe in a higher power of some sort. It's like, well, maybe. I don't think it's that number now, but it's definitely high. And I think there's something in that. I mean, that's been a trend, a product of human nature and human behavior as long as we know, in different ways. But that's the thing, in different ways. And I think this is one of the reasons I kind of challenge dogma so much, and why Christians tend to be on the receiving end of that, because I do live in the United States and Christianity kind of has spirituality by the balls for the most part in this country. And I don't think that's to our benefit. That being said, most Christians I know, many Christians I know, are great Christians. Will Roosh, for example, my favorite Christian. I love that guy. And I love his take on it. I love the way he looks at it. I like the way Jordan Peterson discusses it. I've learned things from him in that. My views on Christianity have changed. I've eased off of it a little bit, but I still take a principled stance against dogma in any form, whether that's radical lefty shit, whether that's Christianity, whether that's like this pro-war dogma, right? This like American exceptionalism dogma that it becomes an excuse for tyranny, in my opinion. And we can see those trends in history. So this woman had shared this thing and somebody sent it to me and was like making fun of this lady. I think it's like, her handle's like 1776 Mama Bear or some shit, like with some stupid Mama Patriot or some stuff, one of those things, right? And it said, if your kid gets straight A's and goes to college and buys a house, but doesn't find the Lord, it means nothing. And I was like, or doesn't find Jesus or some shit like that. And for me, I took that personally because I've done a lot of these things and didn't get straight A's, but I've done some things in my life personally, and this is my own anecdotal experience, right? Has gotten profoundly better. I've been a much better person. I've been a much happier person since leaving Christianity, since consciously stepping away from Christianity. Early on in that process, there was a shitload of resentment, right? But through psychedelics and Buddhist practices, I was able to find compassion, understanding, and eventually gratitude for my experience in Christianity. Reason being that leaving Christianity is not easy to do. Okay, a lot of people will relate to this. People that have, and I know a lot of people, like attracts like, that have had similar experiences and have been really struggled with this, like leaving a belief system that was kind of the scaffolding of your morality, the way you live your life. And it's a challenging thing to do. And because I'm open about that, I do tend to have a bias towards people telling me these stories. And I understand that, right? It's not a random sample when you're open about these kind of experiences. But for me personally, like I took that personally, of course, even though I probably shouldn't have, and shared something about it, just saying, kind of making a joke, making light of it. Like my life has gotten better since leaving Christianity, objectively. But the gratitude came in. I was able to find gratitude through some meditation and just like a lot of Alan Watts stuff and just getting into Pima Chodron was another one who I look at these people and I learned a lot from them in finding gratitude for experiences and knowing that I am the product of my experiences. And the way I show up in my life is a product of my experiences. My free will is the product of experiences, however limited it may be. So I realized that because I had left Christianity, it left this kind of belief or faith or spirituality vacuum in my life. And being a very curious person, I was able to seek out and take from other belief systems to fill that void that was left. And without having had that Christian experience, I may have never had that spiritual vacuum, if you will, right? To find these things that resonate with me in what I feel is a more productive way. I was able to find gratitude for that, which took years. It really did. And it took years to process like all the lingering bullshit that Christianity had kind of left in me, you know? And I think it's different finding Christianity as an adult, getting into it more then versus being a kid. I think it's a little easier for that it's a little easier to grasp the concepts and not be indoctrinated, but have a healthy relationship with it as an adult. And I know more people that have had that experience versus people who grew up in it and were kind of shut off from other things and lived through a principle of shame because as kids, we kind of reduce things down to very simplistic terms, and that can be damaging through an ideology like Christianity, through a mythology. I know Christians don't like hearing that, but it is a mythology. It's a collection of myths. That's what it is by definition. So when this woman kind of attacked me, and of course I brought it on, right? So I'm not innocent in this, but she kept calling me worldly as an insult. I felt that I was talking, and this may sound really cruel, but I'm being completely honest here. I felt like I was talking to a 12-year-old. The way that she engaged with this, right? And kind of good faith critiques of what she had to say, right? Which turned into bad faith critiques after a while because I got annoyed. She was like, she felt as if calling me worldly was tearing down my belief systems. And then she when I talked about different pathways, and I talked about Judaism, I talked about Buddhism, I talked about Islam, I talked about Taoism, right? There's a lot of different methodologies to developing a spiritual reality. And they all deserve to be respected, in my opinion. Right? And criticized, in my opinion. Like, they all deserve to be respected and criticized. All belief systems do. We just happen to have one that is dominant in this culture. If I lived in Iran, it'd be a different story, right? If I was in India and I had a problem with the caste system that has been endorsed by Hinduism, I'd be having a different conversation, right? But I live here in the United States. So when I talk about these, she criticized me for just following some dead guy, because in her mind, Jesus isn't dead. Jesus didn't die, which kind of begs the question. It's like, well, Jesus, yeah, he was tortured and that was bad, but like people are tortured right now. So that's happening all the time. People have gone through way worse things, right? Shall I bring up the Holocaust, westward expansionism, what happened to the Native Americans? Like, the people have gone through really terrible things. At the end of the day, Jesus was dead for like 2 days in your mythology. So he gave up like a long weekend, and then he went to like a better place. So what did he actually do as far as suffering that's exceptional to what millions of other people have dealt with, not hundreds of millions? Odd, right? But one thing I really appreciate about Buddhism is that a lot of it isn't about Buddha. It's not about Siddhartha. That's not what it is about. Even he had the foresight to be like, this thing will change and evolve as people change and evolve. That's why it's based on principles. right? So the Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, these kind of things, it's principle based, which was one of the reasons it resonates with me, and I've kind of built my structure based on that. But it was interesting that she had this idea, and this is what really irked me, was like, there's only one true path. And this woman just thinks that because she was born here and she seems to think she understands other religions, but she doesn't, just based on her dialogue, that she was the arbiter of truth, right? That she had this access, she had this mystical experience, and that was the evidence she needed to confirm her belief that she had the one true path. And I would challenge you guys out there that believe it. Like, is it really that productive to think that you have access to the one true path? I don't think so. I just don't think it is, right? I don't think it breeds healthy skepticism, and then your belief system lacks resilience due to that belief. I think it actively weakens one's belief structure. Now let's talk about this insult that she kept throwing my way, calling me worldly and my beliefs worldly. If we look at mega preachers, their private jets, Joel Osteen, his wife, just a typical white preacher's wife, big hair, Botox, tons of makeup, extravagant clothes, extravagant homes. These are all real things that live within Christianity, right? You also have within Christianity a prosperity gospel, which is much different than the origins of Christianity, much different than Jesus. I think Jesus would be honestly disgusted, right? Jesus would just go hang out with poor people. When's the last time you know a Christian who just hung out with poor people? A lot of Christians hate poor people, right? It's weird. And not that all of you do, but I'm saying you know what I'm talking about, and if you don't, you're deluding yourself, right? So when you look at them, and you have someone who operates within that belief system, right? I don't run into very many Buddhists at Ulta, right? I don't see them going into those stores very often. So when this woman called me worldly, I pulled up a photo of one of my favorite teachers, Pema Chodron. Let's take a look at Pema Chodron. This woman is elderly. She has a buzz cut. And if you look at the first page of her photos here, we'll scroll through. She's wearing a burgundy robe with a yellow scarf or yellow shirt underneath, excuse me. Do you think this woman does she look worldly to you? Does she look worldly to you? Does that seem very worldly? Do you think that her reality exists based on this plane? All right, let's look at another one. Jack Cornfield. Another great teacher of mine. Does this man look worldly to you? Does he have a Bentley or a private jet? Huh. So that attack I really thought was odd. I thought that was a really odd attack. But do you see how that way of functioning within a belief system actively undermines the belief system? The hardcore adherence to one true path, that I have access to absolute capital T truth, does not mean that you are strong in your faith, in my opinion. It means that you're insecure in your faith, but unawarely insecure. There's wisdom in insecurity, right? There's absolutely wisdom in insecurity. It's a book by Alan Watts. It's a great book. Go check it out. There's growth in that. There's understanding in that. That insecurity allows you to doubt yourself and question yourself, which leads to, if you have a belief system that is worthy of resilience, that insecurity can lead to a more resilient belief system. So I think a lot of times Christians have it backwards. And due to that, you have dogma, overreach, centralized authority, right? And a relatively fragile belief system. That being said, believe what you want to believe. And if you find value in your beliefs, get after it. But I wanted to articulate that in a way that wasn't so aggressive. Because sometimes, I do make a lot of jokes about a lot of things. A lot of people who get upset about me making fun of shit like what she had to say will love it when I criticize Dylan Mulvaney and that nonsense, right? Which is also an outreach of belief-based ideology that has overreach and lacks nuance. But a lot of people can't see the similarities, right? We're blinded to ourselves.